Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the His and Her Life Hacks podcast. I'm Larry.
And I'm Dawne.
And today we're going to talk about the topic as a parent of allowing your kids to go through failure and pain in order to grow. And I know for us, so we have 10 children between us, and those children span the age of middle school to high school to college and young adulthood. This is a topic we talk about a lot, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's, the dilemma or the question or, the challenge is, when do you give your child, the big protective hug versus when do you let them kind of try something, fail at something, experience pain in order to truly grow. And so if you think about our kids today, the challenges of them growing, so just for my youngest 3, right, going through middle school, it's the social media pressure that they face. Mm-hmm. It's the being overscheduled. They're in sports. They're in clubs, right? They could be in arts and so forth. They have their friend groups and the pressure of the friend groups and so forth. And it's a lot that weighs on them, right? And so a lot of times you look at them and they may be stressing. Just want to give them a big hug and don't want them to experience failure and so forth. And then we have our older children, right? And what they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. My girls are 29 and 27, as I've said before. And they kind of went through this about 10 years ago, going through the school pressure. The social media was a thing. It wasn't as big as it is today, but it was definitely there. But, even like girls like eating, they don't want to eat because they go through that phase, I'm too fat or I'm skinny or I don't look good or in my clothes or whatever. And then the social media today is even worse with that. And I don't know, they just go through so much with their friends and making decisions and
so this is, we talk about this a lot, and it's the question is, how do you push your children along appropriately so that they get the right experiences, so that they fail, they learn. And this is a topic that we wanted to have had on our list for a while. But the impetus for today's came from, and we'll give him a shout out, a gentleman, Mark Caldwell. So Mark responded to a post we had done recently on LinkedIn. And it was about a topic that we talk about often, is your pain is your purpose. And Mark had said, I love the song and the words to I Wish You Pain, from Andy Grammer. And it was a song I never heard of. And I was going to respond to him, and I said, you know what, let me go listen to the song, right? And so as I did, as I listened to the lyrics, and I'll read you the first verse here, right, is, I hope your doubts come like monsters and terrorize your dreams. I hope you feel the lonely hopelessness because no one else believes. I hope you question whether you ever really had a chance at all. And the rest of them are similar. And I was like, what is this? And so as I listened to it, I then listened to it again. And one of the main points here is this verse, because I love you more than you could know, and your heart, it grows every time it breaks. I know that it might sound strange. And so, so then it started to resonate. And I went...
And you sent it to me, and I was like, oh my goodness. Like, the only underlying message that I could pull from the song and the lyrics was that he's trying to say that you have to go through pain to experience peace or happiness or joy, and for growth, and that resonates with what we do. You've probably heard of us talk about it, but, we go around and we speak to organizations and universities and churches about, your pain is your purpose. That's our top requested, keynote. And what we'll do is, relay that to professional or personal, because we're all going through something. But then when you then take it to children and parenting, it has a whole nother meaning, because we as parents want to protect our children. We don't want them to experience any kind of pain. Like, I have an example of my daughter, Lexi, my oldest. She was at college, and she was the first child, so we were trying to figure this out, and she went away to New York, and she was struggling, didn't want to be there, but, we had to work through that to keep her there. And I guess she was more comfortable than uncomfortable, but she was going through the growing pains. So she ended up staying a whole year. But then end of that year, she was like, you know what, I want to go somewhere else because I don't want to keep staying here. So, okay, great. Then we pivoted, and we didn't have time to would travel or just go look at colleges, right? So at that point, so she ended up going down south, and again, she absolutely hated it even more because she was so far away from home and wanted to come home. And I said, no, you have to stay. You have to. It's been only a couple weeks in, and so when I think of pain and parenting, and again, I'm 10 years removed from it, but I think, okay, well, that's the first thing that popped in my mind, in the sense that I desperately, as a parent, wanted to keep her or bring her home. I didn't want her to have to stay at college because she was crying and she was sad and she wanted to be home and she was uncomfortable. And as a parent, I want to take that away from her. So, but as a parent, I also need to teach her that we have to stay when things are tough, when they're scary, when they're hard, and we'll either get used to them or we'll learn from it, and then we'll grow from it no matter what. So that's just one example of what I think of.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's, my kids obviously went through a trauma when they lost their mom. And, that was a different kind of pain, and certainly not the type of pain you would ever wish on a child. But it impacted how I parented early on because, I just wanted to put a protective cover around them. And, for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to take away their pain and bring it on to me, and I didn't want them to experience any of that. And secondly, trying to raise 8 children while trying to also have a career, like I didn't have the time to kind of teach, right? Teach them how to stub their toe, to fall, and then teach them how to get up. I had to make decisions. Okay, we just got to get going. I'll show you how to do it, or I'll do it for you. And it felt like it was the right thing at the moment. And I certainly don't blame myself looking back. But, I've had some of my older children come to me, last number of years and say, Dad, you'd never let us kind of fail, right? And try things and fail. And I think in looking back now and kind of retrospect, it kind of stymied them in certain ways, and that they've been now overcoming, and we'll talk about some of these things, and trying to learn how to fail and how to learn from that, and that it's okay, right? And you can't be protected all your life. So, for me, I kind of look at how I raised them, and I kind of look at how you raised them, and I think you were in a different boat, right, in how you did it, and it, you can see in the decisions your children made and how that impacted them, and I think that was, in some ways, a very positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure both of my girls might have a different takeaway. I was in a different situation, and as I've shared on previous videos, my situation was single parent, not receiving support from the other parent, so it was kind of me having to do everything, and my kids obviously had to feel that. They experienced that, and it wasn't a positive thing in the sense that they had to experience that, but we plowed through. We've kind of gone through life as the Three Musketeers, and we've had to go through ups and downs and trials, and there were a lot of things that maybe, like, I didn't have the big house that their friends had, and I always felt bad about that when the prom came and stuff like that. So that's a pain, that I think, well, that probably hurt them or stuck with them or whatever. And I felt bad about that. And then, they had to work. So I was able to buy them both, they're each themselves a car. And it was important to me that they had transportation to learn how to be independent, to provide for themselves when need be, but also to get back and forth to school or whatever. So I was buying the car, but that meant car insurance and, gas in their car and, whatever the car needed, tires, brakes, whatever. So I took care of the car insurance, but they had to pay for their gas, which, as you know, kids love to drive once they get their license. Sure. So again, that was like, they're recognizing it's $20 here, $20 there, and whatever. So that was a pain. That was something that, I hated. Ideally, I would love to just buy them a car and give them everything, just give them money every time they needed it. But now they had to go get a job because they had to be able to afford to have this car. So on top of school, sports, like you said. My youngest was in the gym. She was a gymnast 20 hours a week, and she still had to fit time into work to pay for these things that she wanted in her life. And I felt like the worst mom in the whole world doing this. But in the same breath, like, I was maxed out. I was doing everything I personally could, but they also had needs and wants. So it was almost like, okay, I will pay for everything that a parent needs to pay for. But then if they want extras, like I want to go out to lunch with my girlfriend or something, I have to teach them that there's a price for that, so that as they get older, they then learn responsibility and all of that. So different situation, but now fast forward, their work ethic is incredibly strong. They're very successful in their careers. They're driven, they're very structured, have great organizational skills. And I would say that they're strong, smart, driven, independent young girls or women because of the way they were brought up, even though I felt like horrible for doing it.
But I think, you could have and just try to, again, protect them and not let them have to go through it. But you were in a situation where you had to. And I'm sure there's people sitting out there today are in the same situation and wondering, like, oh, is this going to hurt them down the road? But the reality is, they learned certain things that you just described. And now, 16, 18 years later, they're successful, right? And they're successful young ladies and so forth and striving in their lives. And so I think when I look at like my children and some of the things that we've had to adjust and change because, I recognize, right, that you have to be able to go out and try things. And there's a couple examples I have. So my son Simon this summer, he delayed too long in getting a job, which he's in college. Was in his freshman year, and as they tend to do, they didn't take getting a job seriously. So my good friend, Tim Rafter, got him a job at one of his customer sites. It was a landfill. And, Simon had to get up at literally 5:30 every morning and drive the half hour down there. And, he was outside doing hard labor and he was using equipment he didn't know, he didn't understand. And, in a world he didn't really understand. And, by the third day he came back, he's like, Dad, I can't do this. I don't know how to work this equipment. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning. All my friends are sleeping in. Like, I'm going to quit. And I'm like, no, you're not going to quit. Like, you can't do that. Like, you made a commitment. You got to live up to your commitment. And you know what? To his credit, got up the next morning at 5:30, ended up going down there. And by the end of the summer, first of all, he made all the money back that he had spent in his freshman year, which was considerable, right? So that was the main goal for him. But you could see the confidence, right? He walked around. He was standing tall because he learned how to drive big, heavy equipment. He learned how to use the maintenance equipment for the grounds and so forth, things he had never done before. And so, to him, yeah, he went through some pain, right? But instead of just saying, okay, Simon, it's okay, let me give you a big hug and we'll figure out a different job. Like, no, you got to go do this. And, to his credit, he did it and he learned a lot from it. And I could see the confidence grow in that. And, you talk...
Wait, but before you go on, and I just want to jump in on the word confidence because that's a confidence builder. Like that whole thing that you just laid out, same thing. But that's the one thing that does come from pushing the kids. And obviously we're pushing them with love. We're not wanting to be horrible parents. It's just we're teaching them. Actually, there's a story about an eagle that I do love. Somebody told it to me, how the eagle, when she has babies, she takes them to the top of the mountain and she has them in a nest and they're nice and cozy and, the babies are feeling loved and fed or whatever. And then there's a period of time, I forget what it is, but eventually she starts to take them one by one in her mouth, and then she dives off the mountain and she just drops them. And the eagles are supposed to spread their wings, and that's how they fly, right? Yeah. But meanwhile, like, imagine what the child eagle is thinking, like, mom's loving me and cozy and I'm snuggled in my little nest, and then all of a sudden randomly one day she takes me out of that and she literally dives down a mountain and throws me out of her mouth and leaves me. And like the fear and everything that's going through that eaglet's mind is what I think our children feel like. What the heck are you doing? Like, I'm totally fine and comfortable here. I don't want to go out there. Or like I think of Celeste, she doesn't want to drive. Nobody really wants to drive at first because it looks scary and crazy and chaotic. But, event. And she does, of course, drive. But, like, there's little silly things like that. But it's such a confidence builder once they learn how to accomplish whatever it is that they're going through. And Alexi, I should say, learned from her Florida State when she went to the second college. Like, the one thing I was like, what did you learn from that? And she said, now I research, since we didn't have time to go look at the colleges at that point. Now I research everything that I want to do, or any new product or item or any new anything. I research it like crazy before I go and do it, because I don't want to feel either blindsided or caught off guard or not prepared or whatever. So there is some growth that comes from it.
Right.
So.
Well, I think that, kids today, when they make the transition from college into a young adulthood, and I think there's a common thing right now. I think a lot of the kids stay home, and it makes sense, right? It's expensive out there, so you're trying to save some money. But I think there's a detriment to that, right? It's then you don't necessarily learn how to live on your own. And we have a great example. So Zach, he's my third oldest. So he was one of the ones who came to me and said, Dad, you kind of sheltered us a little bit. You didn't let us fail. And so he had a situation. So he had gone to Atlanta after he had graduated college, stayed with my other son, Jordan, and then they both came back last fall and were going to get jobs. And Dawn, through a connection of hers, had gotten him a job at a recruiting company. And, he
literally just, like, went in, had one interview. And I know my friend wasn't just giving him the job. Yeah. Like, he made him, I think, go through, like, a 3-hour interview. But he literally just got the job. Like, so it was super easy, because I introduced him. He worked hard for the interview, but then he was given and then he was given the job, and it was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. This is easy. Yeah. But
and he started off successfully, right? Yeah. And then he ran into some challenges, and I think it wasn't really what he wanted to do. He really had wanted to be in sales when he came out, but we said, hey, this is a good start. But then he got to a point where he got really frustrated. He came to both of us and he said, I'm going to quit. And we're like, no, Zach, you can't quit. Like, Zach, you need to stay a full year. Give it that much time, and maybe you'll come around. If not, then you've given an appropriate amount of time, and then you can make a decision, right? And 2 weeks later, he calls me. It's like 5
I think he called me first, right? Because he knew he was going to get an earful from you.
Well, yeah.
And so he said he quit, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you quit.
So he then called me, and I'm like, okay, come home. And so we went out to breakfast or lunch by the time he got home, and I'm like, listen, like, it's easy to make that type of decision when part of your existence is funded by your dad, because he was living at home, right, while he was, doing this. And
no consequences.
Yeah, no consequences. Like, I can quit. But I said, listen, I get it. Like, that's your choice, but here's what you need to do now. Now, you need to go out. And you need to go out and live on your own. And he wanted that. Like, he's like, I want to do it on my own. Like, I want to be able to make it. I'm like, okay, great. By the end of this summer, you need to be out on your own, and you need to be working and living in an apartment and so forth. And so...
Well, wait, before you go on. So, by me helping him, in my way of thinking, oh, this is great. Like, I can connect him or whatever, I made it too easy for him. So, when he said, I want to do this on my own, like, that was basically an example of a child saying to you, you did too much. Like, we wanted to make it easy and comfort, and like, okay, let's make it cushiony, but then we did too much by doing that, and we didn't know. We're like, thought we're just doing the right thing.
So he moves out in the beginning of October. So he missed it I guess he missed it by like 2 weeks or whatever. So, but he moves out with my other son Jordan and a friend, and now he's got a full month in that apartment. And he comes to me and he says, "You know what, Dad? I am 100% funding my existence right now. Every bill, which is true, every bill that he has, whether it's his rent or whether it's his car payment,
he got another
insurance."
Job, so you forgot to say
right,
that.
No, so he did go get another job. And so, but he was proud of himself, and it was like, okay, like, you made the step. And I could have easily said, okay, Zach, come home, just live at home, figure it out or whatever, and he wouldn't have had the motivation and the encouragement to go out and do it, and he did. And so I think he now is feeling proud of himself. He's feeling self-sufficient, and again,
and the pressure. He's feeling the pressure, because I know the other day he said, my gosh, today was the day all my bills were due and everything. And so I remember that. I remember feeling like, I'm making all this money, and then all of a sudden it's time for bills, and you're like, oh my God, I have like $10 left at the end,
Right.
So it feels like it comes in and it goes out, and he's learning that, which is painful because they're seeing that, but it's a good thing.
Well, I think, I just think it's giving again, I learned this a little bit later, right? But I think it's letting them fail, letting them experience some pain, but then they experience growth through that. And so I'm trying to learn from that. So your example of Lexi with the college, and actually it's very applicable because Florida State. So Faith, who's my senior in college, or excuse me, senior in high school right now, is going through the whole college process. And she wants interior design, and so she worked with the school, came up with a list of schools to go see. So I took her around, and some were in the Mid-Atlantic area, some were in Florida, far away. But that's where she wanted to do it. And I'm like, listen, I will take you wherever you want to go. But this is your decision. This is your process. You're going to run it. I'm going to help you. I'll give you guidance, but you need to make this decision. So we did actually go to Florida State. She loved it. But as we're driving from Florida State back to Jacksonville to go on the flight, I'm like, listen, this is a 2.5, 3 hour ride, drive to get to the airport, and then you fly home. So think this through.
Yeah.
Because, this is the decision you're making, but you're going to own this decision, and then you need to live with the decision because now you've seen it and experienced it. And that includes the financial aspects, right? There are cheaper schools that you can go to, but we were laying it out like, this is how much I can give you, this is how much the school can give you once we get all that in, and this is what's left for you, and you'll have to make that decision. So it's trying to encourage them to be able to make those decisions, and not what I felt with like maybe some of my older children was like, okay, you should probably go here, just highly recommending, maybe where they should go, instead of having them fully kind of own the process. But again, you live and you learn, and I think for Faith and then Carmel and Solomon to come, like they're gonna have to own that process and make those decisions and live with it.
Yeah, so. And then she'll have to get a job or whatever at college just to support whatever their needs are. By the way, don't mind the grass cutters in the background, which of course had to happen now, but we're just gonna keep going. So. But no, I think all of that is such a good thing. It's a growth opportunity. And for me, it's easy. Like for me, I come in and I'll see the kids and I'll be like, oh, here's an opportunity or whatever. And some of their growing is happening and you're not liking it very much because the girls are getting older and, going through their own teen stuff, which I love. But.
Well, and I think like relationships, right? Relationships are a big part. And I think you have an example of your daughter, right? Going through a relationship, but having the courage and conviction, right? It was a long relationship but now look where it's at, right?
Yes.
And having the confidence to stay strong in that. And when the world would probably tell you to do different things or not necessarily stay in a relationship, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's Sierra, my youngest, and she and her now fiance have been together like 10 and a half years, 11 years maybe, just since high school. And yeah, they went through ups and downs and breakups. And I remember one incident where they broke up. It was like a random 2 a.m., came home and she was hysterical crying, and we had to get on a train the next day at like 6:30 in Philadelphia. And she was literally, she was going back to college, East Carolina, and she had her blankie. Like I literally saw her as a 3-year-old, like with her little blankie wrapped around her, and she was just like, sobbing and just so upset. And as a parent, I just did not want to send her back to school. I just wanted to be like, you know what? Bag school, stay home with me. We'll get through this. It killed me to send her on that train. It really did. These are kind of the hidden secrets behind parenting, like that our kids don't always see. The tears that come out of us when we're dying inside, but we're putting on this strong face and trying to push them back. And it's to help them grow. And she obviously got through it. They got through it. And it's normal part of life to go through a heartbreak and a breakup. And their relationship truly couldn't be stronger, better, happier, more pure. They've literally grown up together. They each had braces, the whole 9 yards.
But I'll bet at that moment in time, you probably just wanted to embrace her and be like, that's it. You're done. Like no relation,
Yeah, there was a point where that happened. And I actually advised her to give it a break. And she, again, okay, this is where me raising them as strong, independent women, making up their own minds, counteracts, because I was like, just give it a break for a reason in a minute. And she was like, you know what, I love you and I love and appreciate your advice, but I'm going to do this on my own and I am going to stay. And basically then they were going to work it out. So by the way, that's a very mature. She's a better person than I am in the regards of forgiveness and the ability to stay. And as parents, we always want our children to be better than us and learn from our mistakes. And they're obviously, if I'm telling her I think it's time for a break and she stayed, then she worked through what it was. And then they stayed and went through that process, which was a healing, like a forgiveness and a healing. So again, they've grown tremendously over these 11 years, and now they're engaged to be married. And
what a beautiful moment, right?
And they have such a great relationship. It's very healthy, which is a great thing. It's very healthy.
So again, I think, when you think back to some of these, and these examples come up every day. Like I literally had my youngest son the other day, he was invited to go do something. He had committed to go doing it. And then he decided, you know what, I don't really want to go do it. I'm not comfortable or whatever. And I said, no, like, you have to go do this, right? Like, you committed to it. Like, it's not fair to your friends when you say you're going to do something and then you decide at the last second to back out. And by the way, right, it's a growth opportunity for you to learn, right? To go through something that may not feel comfortable for you, but you end up doing it. And he did. And he came back and he had a great time. And I'm like, okay, so what did you learn? Like, well, I learned that I could do it.
Yeah.
Right. And 10 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, son, that's okay. You don't have to go do it. Give him a big hug. And again, it might have felt good in the moment, but, for his long-term growth and health and so forth, it was better to let him go and do this. And even if it didn't turn out well, he would have learned something through that as well. So, it's a challenge. I think all of you sitting out there as parents probably have these conversations every day in your homes. Like, what is that line? It's a very blurry line between, giving them the big hug and the embrace and kicking them in the butt and being like, go try it. If you fail, pick yourself back up and learn from it. But, as parents, if we don't allow them to go through it, and as, the lyrics say, like, we want them to experience that so that they can then come out on the other side healthy, right, vibrant, mature, young adults that are then going to thrive in their life. And I think if we don't do that, then we're kind of robbing them of those experiences, and then we're setting them back. And it's just something that I think it's a constant back and forth. And we talk about it all the time. So
I mean, there's just such a distinct difference between enabling and empowering your child. And I think empowering is going to be the long-term success, because you can empower them and work through a painful situation or a moment, but then at the end, you're not making it easy for them in the moment. And so enabling would be the example of that. So the complete opposite. But yeah. I definitely think that there's some benefits to that.
Yeah. So I think, we could go on there. I have lots more examples. Dawn has more examples to talk about in terms of, allowing your children to go through things and fail and experience some pain, and then help them picking them up so they can learn and grow from it. But, I think the takeaway is let's let our kids experience it, right? And let's be there to support them. We certainly, want to be there to make sure we help them, but they need to take those steps and they need to experience what that is like. And in the end, you're going to have healthy children who, when they get older, they're going to thank you for it. So, that's what we wanted to talk about. Again, shout out to Mark for giving us the prompt, right, to move this particular episode up at this time. And, thank you for joining in, and we'll look forward to hosting on your next one.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of the His and Her Life Hacks podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to having you join us on future episodes. If there's a topic that you would like Dawn and I to discuss, please feel free to contact us at dawn.jacoby@grit2grace.com or larry.ambrose@grit2grace.com. See you on the next one.